Fat leg whiskey makes the whiskey world go round, right?
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Let's get some more. Clap your hands. Some more. Let's get some more.
All right, and welcome to my whiskey den. We're all back, one big happy family for one big review from the South. We're going to jump into letting Ben talk about this because it is down from his neck of the woods. But the nose alone on this, Ben, has got some interesting stuff going on before you even start, man. Wow.
Yeah, this is my favorite rye, and I think you'll find out for good reason. But yeah, in my neck of the woods distillery is here in Piedmont, South Carolina, 620. They're about 20 minutes up the road from where I live. This is their latest special release. They have a few standards that they do. Their weeded whiskey called the Old Money, and they have their 5-grain bourbon, but ever so often they do some special releases like they've done an oat whiskey, and this is their first rye. It's an heirloom straight rye whiskey. So it's being a straight rye, it's at least 51% rye in the mash, and it's aged for a minimum of 2 years. This has been aged a little over 3 years, new charred oak. And it's, as far as I know from the distillery, it's 100% rye. And they're using the Seashore Black rye, which is an heirloom varietal found here in South Carolina and Georgia, a few parts of North Carolina and Florida. But it's not widely grown, and its main use really is to help block wind and sand, so kind of as a wind block for crops, especially in sandy coastal areas. Introduced in 1831 to our area, and they're starting to discover that it's got some really interesting qualities when it's been milled and either turned into flour or used for distilling. There's only 2 distilleries that I know of that have distilled a whiskey from this. One was in Florida using a Florida varietal several years ago. And then right now, I think 620 is the only one doing it. But it is a unique rye. It's got some really unique notes. If you want the background on 620, I'm sure, Patrick, you can link them here somewhere where we've discussed that distillery before. Started in 2011 by David Rad, and they have some interesting takes on whiskey, but this one by far has been my absolute favorite from their distillery, and it's coming in at 92.5 proof.
And we are in the works with trying to get them on the show as well too.
Right.
We agreed to. We're just kind of working on setting up a time, and we do have. Ben was extremely generous. I think we have 4 other samples of some of their whiskey, so we're going to be going through kind of the lineup that they have as we get closer. 2 small things. I remember you were saying it kind of used as a wind block. So this really wasn't used and almost was like kind of brought back, kind of like the Jimmy Red Corn for this type of use, specifically bred, specifically used and grown for this. And okay, another crazy thing, you said this was distilled 5 times.
Say what?
Am I right in that?
When I did the tour of the distillery, that's what they explained. All their whiskeys, they go through 5-step distillation process. So they're distilled through 5 times.
And we can't wait to get them on to talk about the heads and tails cuts on something like that, because most people are a 2 or a 3 time. 5 is, I don't want to say excessive, because I'm still getting a lot of flavors coming off the nose. It's not like this turned into a light whiskey.
Yeah.
It still has a lot of stuff in it. So I thought that was something interesting, just because there's not a lot of people doing that. And I want to talk to them about that, because that sounds, just going the extra 2 steps has got to be really interesting for what you're trying to grab out of it.
So why is it used as a blocker with blocker rye? Is it because it's really hardy, or it's tall, or it grows close together, or all of the above? Or
I think it's a little bit of all of the above from the research I've done, and it tends to prosper really well in that salty, sandy environment of the coast.
Okay.
The one farm I found that's cultivating it locally, basically the guy's father had been farming it for 40 years, but he primarily used it as a wind blocker. And then his son came along and said, hey, why don't you let me grow some of this and mill it and let's see what happens. He said it had such a great nutty flavor. It lacked the tackiness of a lot of typical rye, and it just turned out really well. So they started growing it as a crop then instead of just using it as a blocker for other crops. So
yeah, it's always neat to see the craft guy going that extra step.
Yeah.
So we're digging this already.
Okay, raising this thing up and down, looking at it, man, this thing's got a hell of a set of legs on it.
it does.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get close.
I have not tried this yet, and I am very excited to try that. I'm looking forward to it.
So kind of a nice ambery brown, kind of light yellow color to it. But like Mike's saying, it's hard to see on mine because of the stupid reflection of it. So, but it gets up high, and it takes a long time for those legs to develop. And when they come down, they are definitely defined. Not like the doers I had the other day. These two didn't get to have any of it, but that stuff washed right down. This is like clinging to the edge of the glass and taking a while to form those legs, and they are thick, thick legs when they're coming down.
She got some big legs.
She got some big legs. So let's jump into some nosing on this one.
Fat leg whiskey makes the whiskey world go round, right?
It does. I'll agree to that.
See, now we got to reshoot this with you dressed up as Freddy.
right. Get the mustache here.
That's right.
That could be the intro.
I'll have the pipes that guy does, though.
All right, so, I mean, there's just a very mild. I don't want to say it's anise, but it's like a candy colored licorice or candy covered licorice.
I was gonna say it's like a flat black licorice where it's
muted by sweetness. That's why I was getting the candy covered, because it's just it's there, but you really got to get it. But it's got a sweet nose.
It does. It's sweet. It's oily. Even on the nose, it has a kind of a rich denseness to it, and it is more it's more licorice than it is like eucalyptus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to figure out what this because it reminded me of something, because there was a little bit of nuttiness, but I wasn't quite sure. But it reminded me of this. It was a Asian type salad that my wife used to make, that you actually bake ramen noodles with almonds to start. And I was like, that's what it reminds me of, because it's just got that kind of a little bit of a noodle to it, but not much. But the almond, there's just like a very particular smell coming from it.
Yeah, there's a nuttiness to it, and I think you'll find that on the palate as well.
Yep, on the second half, I get kind of like a brown sugar and kind of nut mixture. I almost like a little bit of like a molasses cookie.
Yeah.
But not really heavy on the breadiness, so not like fresh baked, maybe like a couple days later when you're digging into the bag that's getting empty.
There's a little bit of earthiness to it, and I get like a chocolate fudge.
That's where I was going with that too.
Yeah, chocolate fudge and nuts.
It smells like something that's dense but not intense.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you got to really keep going at it.
And the chocolate fudge kind of is like an underlying kind of flavor to it, is what I'm getting from it from beginning to end. I'm really the nose on it is really pretty.
It is. It's very nice.
You can definitely get into it and see what's going on. And this one is 46.25% alcohol by volume, so not at the base 40, jumped up a little bit. All right, let's see what she tastes like.
I gotta go in.
It feels oily, but not incredibly dense. I don't know. Definitely not like a canola oil or anything like that. Like, I'm sure everyone's put like the little EVOO and kind of taken it themselves. So thinner than that, but very coating.
Yes.
And you can definitely tell it has like a higher oil content to it.
Yeah. But it's not like, and it's got a decent proof to it, but it doesn't spread out and like take over your palate. It's like it stays where you put it, and it just kind of a nice fading out to it.
And I'm getting kind of like a shallow build in flavors. When it first comes in, it's a little bit lighter, You're getting a couple of the kind of the sweet notes to it. And then like halfway through, the molasses starts to kick in a bit. And then you get like when you swallow, you kind of like a little bit of this spice that kicks up, where it's kind of like almost like a light clove, not a little bit of anise, not a ton of pepper on it, but really interesting. I gotta go back again.
I get a weird ginger cookie note to it.
Yeah, there's kind of that. I could definitely see that ginger
Like,
cookie,
yeah,
molasses cookie, but with a little bit more of that spiciness to it in a way.
Yeah. But it's not a spicy rye.
No,
it's
no.
like it's a rich rye.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not. But that sounds really weird because I was saying it's not overly powerful. But what is there? How about what's left after the 5 distillations is kind of rich. It seems a little thin, but it is rich with what is in there.
Yeah. It seems like it's if you were to try this in some cocktails, it would hold its own not because of the proof, but because of what's in it.
Yeah, the flavor.
And I think that the flavor is dense enough
Yeah.
that it would really hold its own. But the proof is this is very easy to drink.
Yes, and I'm getting a lot, and some of that nutty notes in it as well too, especially on like the second half and the finish. That's where I'm getting a lot of kind of the nut flavor kind of coming in. Maybe that's what I was getting confused with the bread cookie, is that it's such a soft, kind of rounded version of like a nut. You're just getting like the middle part of it, not when you bite in, but kind of that midway through chewing a nut, where you kind of already salivated and gotten through the sharp parts, and it's just the rich part that's left.
Yeah, for me, it's right after you swallow, as it kind of gets ready to transition towards the back end to the finish. I would describe it as like a cocoa dusted almond, like this almond nuttiness with a coating of chocolate to it, slightly dark maybe. But that's been one of my favorite parts about this whiskey. I love that on this. Right at that transition, you get this nutty chocolate note that, for me, that I've really enjoyed.
I get that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the thing I get the cocoa, but it gets a flavor of a heavy grain bread that has like a honey almond butter on it. This is really good, man.
I would love to see what bread would be, like making something out of just the grain itself, like some bread or something like that, just to see what it would be like next to it, to taste it. And doing it 5 times, that's why I want to have them on. I'm intrigued by that, because you would think maybe at 2 or 3 times, this might be flavor-wise maybe a little more potent or aggressive at that point, where this is extremely drinkable.
Right.
Yes.
Like you definitely don't need to put it in anything else. You could have this out by itself and be drinking this, and it's complex enough that you'll enjoy it, but it's relaxing enough that you could enjoy what you're doing if it's just like your Saturday afternoon on your deck, taking a break after you mowed the lawn or something. You could really enjoy this one. But I would. This is one where if we go down in the seabed, I want to go there and be like, and ask them, maybe you can have like just 4 ounces pulled off after like the 3rd distillation run that you would have kept, and see what happens as you jump down the line, because I think that progression is something that would be extremely interesting to see how that works, because this is super friendly.
Yeah, I think for real whiskey nuts, guys who really love their whiskey, that 2.5 distillation run is like right in the perfect niche of getting all the notes and everything that you want out of whiskey. In my opinion, this is not having talked to them in depth about this, but this kind of follows their house style. I think they're going after drinkability, after a really smooth whiskey, and because this tends to follow the line of what they've done with their wheat whiskey and with the 5-grain bourbon. They're kind of in the same very smooth, very drinkable style. So I think that's kind of what they're going after. But I think if you really wanted to hit the real whiskey nerd crowd, if you were to cut that back to about 2.5, man, you'd have something intensely amazing.
I like this where it's at. Like I
Yeah.
totally saw where it's at.
Yes.
But I think, like you said, like if you were hosting a tasting, I think that would be where, like you said, it's just for the whiskey nerds. Is all it would be for, is when you would get to try that kind of that combination, like a 3 versus a 5 or a 2 versus a 5, to see what happened. I think that would be a great night. You know, like that could be the whole night for me, and I would be ecstatic with it.
Yeah.
Damn, I had something, but I lost it.
Have either of you guys smelled the empty glass?
It's been a little while since I've had a glass of this, and that's usually I come back the next day and I'm smelling what's left in there. But
man, that is what's left there. It is one of the one of the smells that reminds me, yet like when you're out somewhere in a nice open farm field and you just get that breeze that just carries the grain in the air. You know, it's just this very nice wafting to it. Man, it's
here's where I find again the distinction between what I typically get out of a Midwestern rye versus here's a rye in South Carolina. What I don't get are the notes of mahogany and lemon oil.
Yep.
The kind of the pledge furniture polish and the mahogany wood that I typically find in a lot of Midwestern ryes. That's not really present here to me.
yeah.
And I'd lean towards maybe a bigger punch and spice too.
Yeah.
And that might be barrel or something that comes into it as well too. But yeah, I'm getting like, it's like almost like the spice is almost like a light ginger and clove, you know, nudge.
Yeah.
And then it kind of goes away. It's not like that peppery attack you kind of rye spice from it. This is really good. I'm glad you sent us this one. This is really unique.
I figured this might be a rye you finally like. Might be up your alley,
I do. For me, this is one I really enjoy this because it's a little bit sweeter, but I do. I want to try this all over the scale. I want to try it at the 2. I want to try it at the 5 distillation. I almost want to see what it's like at cast strength.
Oh yes, please.
And like both of those, just because I'm like just the increase in flavors. It's one of those ones where I think when we did Jimmy Redcorn and I liked it at a lower proof, I feel like they may have done a lot of work on this and honed in on what they really liked as the release. You know,
when you're coming in at 92.5, you kind of feel like they dialed in something very specific.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it works really well with what it is.
Yeah.
This could be a very entry level rye for a lot of people. And I don't mean that as like its complexity. I mean that as I think a lot of people would really enjoy it and start working up to the next stages.
Yeah. No, I see.
You could get slapped around.
Yeah. Like Old Forester rye is an inexpensive, could be called an entry level rye, but yet there's a lot to it. This is, I wouldn't say it's in the same vein. I think this is definitely better by far. This is a more complex whiskey and I think a more complex rye than that is for sure. But man, there's just enough spice to it, but it is, like Pat said, you're not trying to slap you around, you know, and try to find your safe word. You know, it is it's a very, very nice, pleasant whiskey.
Yeah. This is oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's it for me, because as much as I love a punchy rye and I like the spiciness and I like to be kicked around by a rye, but this just kind of strikes that balance, and it's unique enough to just stand alone and be something really different from just about any other kind of rye that you have.
Yeah.
And that's why for me, it's become my favorite rye out of everything I've tried so far.
I can see that. This is something that I think if went to, and maybe it already has, but if it went to certain competitions, I think it would be very surprising. And I think it would, especially in a blind format.
Yes.
I think in a blind format, this would gain a lot of attention.
Yes.
I think that this is really exciting. So probably good. I mean, 20 minutes into praising this thing, I think that's okay. This is a very good one. Ben, thanks for the history on it and stealing this from your local place. It's always nice, even like, how far away is this place from your house?
About 20 minute drive from my house.
That's the sweet spot there. So hope they start opening up and letting people come back in soon.
And so far, this was just a one-off run. So I really hope they plan on doing this again. Yeah, I would love to see this added to their regular lineup. So,
This should be in their core lineup.
yeah,
Like
Yes.
this is quality. If looking at ryes, I know we're not a number rye place. High 80s, low 90s. I mean, this is a really sharp, exciting rye for me.
yeah,
Because even now I'm getting more flavors in the aftermath the more I drink it. You know, it's even the finish nothing's overly intense, but it's got unique flavors.
Yes.
That's what I find exciting about this. Like
it's well rounded and they're nicely layered. The flavors are layered in there. You can spend some time trying to pull those out. Nothing real spiky about it. So yeah,
excellent.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Fantastic. Well, remember, craft whiskey is king, and it's not the size of the den that matters. It's the love of whiskey. Cheers, everyone out there.
Cheers.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Let's get some more. Clap your hands. Some more.